going to spend a few minutes here talking about the default workspace in Photoshop CS2. So if you take a look at the top of the screen, you have, of course, your basic menu bar with all your menu commands. But right below that is something very important called the options bar. And this is a contextual palette or contextual bar that changes based on the tool that you have selected. So currently we have the Move tool selected right here with the little pointer tool and the directional arrow tool. And you'll see that the controls that are available to me, the options that are available to me, are contextual to that Move tool. So if I switch to a different tool, let's say the crop tool, then I've got options that are specific to that tool. We'll talk more about that later. Of course, on the left-hand side is the Tools palette, where you can access all your tools. You have your document window, and on the right-hand side, you have your default palette arrangement. One other thing to mention about the options bar is that you have this one button access to something called the Adobe Bridge, or Go to Bridge. And if I click that, that will launch the bridge. And this takes you to a separate application where you can look for files, see thumbnails, do some other functions. There'll be a separate movie on just the Adobe Bridge. But for now, that's just one quick way to jump back to the Adobe Bridge. If you want to get back to Photoshop, the keyboard shortcut for that on the Mac is Command-Shift-O as in open, and on PC it would be Control-Shift-O. And that's a way to toggle back and forth via the keyboard between the Bridge and Photoshop. So just doing Control-Shift-O or Command-Shift-O. Clicking that button takes you there, or Command-Shift or Control-Shift-O. To the right of the Bridge button is something called the Palette Well, and this is where you can actually dock palettes that you don't necessarily want open on your screen on the right-hand side, but you don't want them closed all together. You can drag the tabs into what's called the Palette Well. And if you roll over a tab, it actually brings that tab to the front to show you what that palette is. If I click on one of the tabs, it pops down temporarily, and when I click outside of it, it goes away. So back to the palettes over here on the right. I call these the default palette groups as well. There's the Navigator group, the Color group, the History group, and the Layers group. And what I mean by that is, Layers, it has channels and paths in it as well. History has actions with it. Color has swatches and styles, and the Navigator palette has info and histogram. Now, by default, every one of these palettes has a unique F key assigned to it to open and close the entire group. So, for instance, if I were to press the F7 key, that would open and close the Layers group. The F8 key would open and close the Info group, and then F6 would open and close the Color group. Option F9 would open up the History and Actions group. What's great about that is that every palette in a particular group has the same keyboard shortcut, technically. So, for instance, if I want to get to the Channels palette, and if it's not open, if I were to hit the F7 key to open the Layers group, then I could just click on the Channels path, or the Channels tab, to select that palette. So I don't have to worry about memorizing all these different keyboard shortcuts for each of these palettes. I only need to remember the one for the group. Basic rule of thumb: press F6 through F9, you'll get to the palette you're looking for. Eventually, over time, you'll memorize the ones that you were actually wanting. That's just a lot easier than going up to the window menu and finding the specific palette you're looking for. And you can see here the default F key shortcuts to open up those groups.